Well, welcome back. Glad to have you aboard this evening. Here in Pocatello, it's kind of a misty, rainy, not sure if it wants to rain or not. I hope you're having nice weather where you live. Welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. I am your award-winning host, Ralph Lillig, and we're glad to have you here. Got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the election. Hoorah for Netanyahu. More about that later. But let's start, as I do every week at this time, and just ask you again to remember in your tithing and your prayers, if you would, Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a nonprofit, very small organization, receives no federal monies, just like the Planned Parenthood. And Compassion and Hope is all about life. In fact, their mission statement is, Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. And that's as simple as it gets. They are about life. And if you are about life, please keep them in your mind. They can be reached at 478-HOPE. And I hope you'll call them. Of course, if you're out of state, the area code for the whole state of Idaho is 208. But please call Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center at 478-HOPE. They could certainly use your financial help, but there may be other ways in which you can help. And when you do, think in terms that you may be saving a life. You may be helping to bring a new life into the world that may otherwise be aborted. And you know, think of those names that come to your mind. Think of the people who might have been aborted if Planned Parenthood had been around and what they contributed to the world. Albert Einstein, Dr. Schweitzer. I mean, there's so many names, Sister Teresa. There are so many names that you can come up with, great people who, except for the fact that there was no Planned Parenthood, were born, oftentimes in destitute situations. But they were born. And Planned Parenthood is not about bringing new life into the world. In fact, they have no problem with killing life after it's got into the world. And don't take my word for it. Look up their doctrines, if you will. They are an evil, evil, evil organization by my standards. Now, perhaps you see them differently. And if you're pro-choice, pro-abortion, obviously I'm the bad guy in the room. Anyway, please call Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE, and see what you can do to bring compassion and hope to a young mother, a newborn baby. On a lighter note, if you will, coming up now, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, and Aaron Gubra, and to those of you who missed it, I'm wearing the green shirt in memoriam, if you will, of yesterday. At my family, in my house, we did have the traditional potatoes and a pint. We did have the pint. And my son-in-law, God bless his pointy little head. He is a teetotaler, really, but to kind of honor his dad and St. Patrick, we shared a pint. So, and we had, the roast. I'm just drawing a blank on the thing. Hash, corned beef. So we had the corned beef, potatoes, and soda bread, Irish soda bread, which I myself prepared. And, well, my wife gave me directions. But anyway, so a very happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And that is going to have some significance a little later in the program also. But going forward, coming up is an Irish hoolie. Now, if you are, on March 17th every year, everybody's Irish. Just the way it is. Everybody is Irish or wants to be Irish. We all have a good time with St. Patrick's Day. And if you're in some places like Butte, Montana, they drink green beer, which has never made any sense to me. But, people have a good time. And maybe 10% of the people out there boozing it up really believe in the St. Patrick story or anything else. But an Irish hoolie is, there are two things that the old Irish are very famous for. Now, you won't hear a lot of it here in a city like Pocatello. We have a different culture. An Irish wake is something to behold. You have to have experienced one. And I don't say that denigratingly or in any way disparaging. I am of Irish heritage, and I respect the old traditions. But an Irish wake is something indeed to behold. And a hoolie. Now, hoolie is a party, a crike, if you will. And it's just a lot of fun. And there's an Irish hoolie that's coming up on the 28th of April. 24th, I'm sorry. Garth, forgive me. The 24th of April. Now, if you are of Irish heritage, and in our community here, the majority of the community is LDS. So many people in this community have done genealogy, and so they have seen their antecedents, their ancestors, and so perhaps you have had some interest in your Irish heritage. And then that would kind of segue in a strange way that only I could invent, I guess, to an Irish hoolie. So if you have any interest in Irish traditions, whether it's about the history of the Celtic people, especially the Irish. The Irish in America would make up about 10% of this nation. Those who claim to be Irish, about 33 million people, and the Irish, of course, have had a significant impact on our nation, both good and bad. But anyway, so if you have some interest in things Irish, then get involved in an Irish hoolie. And an Irish hoolie can be a lot of fun. Now I'm going to just read it from the flyer. It says, celebrate at an Irish hoolie. Hoolie is an Irish word for party. Live music featuring the Wild Potatoes. Friday, April 24th, 2015, at the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building, 300 North Johnson Avenue. That's at, it was at Franklin and Johnson, I think it is. From 5:30 in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night. $28 per person, limited seating. So, or you can buy a table of 8 for $200, which is kind of a bargain there. Purchase tickets at, and if you have your pencil and paper ready, if you watch this program, you know to always have a pencil and paper handy. And so, if you're interested in the hoolie, contact Falling Rock Productions, and that's Captain Bengal's Comic Cove at 348 North 3rd Street. I'll read that again. Falling Rock Productions / Captain Bengal's Comic Cove, 348 North 3rd Street, or Our Lady's Bookstore at 1023 Yellowstone Avenue, Suite E. That's Our Lady's Bookstore, 1023 Yellowstone Avenue, Suite E, or online at www. And this is one word, it's several words rushed together, kind of like reading German. There's one word for your internet. Idaho Irish Studies, one word, Idaho Irish Studies, spell it just like it sounds, .com, and you can purchase tickets there, I guess. Or for more information, contact Irish Idaho at ymail.com. So this is a hoolie, and hoolies are just a good time. And the Irish have a reputation for being hard drinkers and hard partiers and all that. You don't have to be a hard drinker to have fun at an Irish hoolie. Oftentimes at Irish hoolies, a lot of it is singing and dancing, and you don't have to be a dancer. But it's just a lot of fun, and you meet other people who want to have fun. You're there to have a good time, and you'll never have better time than at an Irish hoolie, at a craic. So the Irish hoolie, 24th of April at the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building. And I'll be telling you about this right up until the Wednesday before, so that you'll get the information if you missed it tonight. Excuse me. Well, it looks like spring has sprung, and so if you are like me and if you have some allergy problems, they're already starting to pop up. I wasn't really sure I'd be able to do the show live tonight. My sinuses are burning and my chest is dry, and it's going to be an interesting evening for my trying to speak, in long sentences. Now, I told you about this last week, and I want to bring it to your mind again, and that's about this little fellow, Regan James Page, 2 years old. And this is, boy, you talk about getting the double whammy. This little guy was born with Kleefstra syndrome. And Kleefstra syndrome is a rare genetic condition in which a tiny piece is missing from near the end of one of the body's 46 chromosomes. This little guy has been through many surgeries. He had a feeding tube placed in while he was in the NICU, feeding tube closure, open heart surgery, hypospadias repair, ear tubes, double hernia repair, and adenoid removal, all before his 2nd birthday. Through all of this, he's so happy all the time, and he has the best personality and can steal your heart the first time you meet him. So we, this organization, would be grateful for your support and excited to celebrate his continued fight with the bull riding fundraiser on April 11th. And that's just, a week and a half, 2 weeks from now? So remember that date, 11th April. And this will be, this is a benefit Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. And boy, that's a long title for an organization. Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. This is a yearly fundraiser they do. This time it's for this little fellow. Sometime it'll be somebody else. They have a bull riding yearly to help the family of a critically ill child by donating all the money made through donations, sponsors, auction, and raffle. Now, this will begin Saturday, April 11th at 1 p.m. at the Bannock County Fairgrounds at the indoor arena. That's that large white, tent-like structure, the huge indoor arena for the horses. That'll be April 11th at 1 p.m. Then, see, that's Saturday, but preceding that, they've got this a little out of sync here. Preceding that, Friday the 10th at 6 p.m., there will be a meet and greet. And then Saturday the 11th at 11:30 a.m., there will be an Exceptional Kids Rodeo, and that should be a lot of fun, Exceptional Kids Rodeo. Also, Saturday 11th April at 12:30, a mini bull riding, and that could be a lot of fun. And then at 1 p.m., the benefit bull riding, 3 sections, and a short go. Throughout the day, we'll have a silent auction and raffle. Between each section of bull riding, we will be auctioning off large items. And one of the things they're auctioning off is a saddle. And from the picture of it, this is a nice-looking saddle. So it says, try your luck, win this saddle, beat the odds benefit bull riding for Riggin Page. The benefit is Saturday 11th, September 11th. And here again, it's getting a little confusing because we got that other stuff. Yeah, Friday the 10th is a meet and greet. And I already told you about this little guy's needs. Now this is, boy, you talk about a bargain and having a lot of fun and going for a good thing. 5 tickets for $20. How are you going to beat that? 5 drawing tickets for $20, or a ticket would be for $5. Now, if you're interested in helping this Riggin Page benefit and maybe getting involved, contact Shasta Dixon. And I'll give you a phone number here. I have 208, of course, Shasta Dixon at 317-2269. Call her, Shasta Dixon, at 317-2269, or you can find her in McCammon at 10118 South Hall Road. And then the email address, this is the second longest email address in existence, I guess. Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. All one word jammed together. Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding at gmail.com. And see what you can do to help that. You know, all those things that the little guy has had to go through at his early age. And this is quite an expense. And there's a cute picture of the family here. Everybody's smiling, including the little Riggin. He's got quite an engaging personality, even in the photograph. Mom and Dad. But you know what? With these kinds of things, well, you have children, or if you have children or grandchildren, I don't have to tell you how that touches you. So if you can help. Well, today was not a happy day for the Obamianists. And of course, if you followed the news at all today, excuse me, you'll see it hopefully in the paper tomorrow, although don't expect to see it in the Idaho State Journal, but you may. News is, well, they might have a girls' basketball tournament that has to be on the front page. So, but anyway, Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu has won a 3rd term as Prime Minister of Israel. And that's significant for a number of reasons. Bibi, as he's known, I guess internationally, is truly a national hero in the state of Israel. I believe he was born there, although he was educated here. I'm not sure if he was born there, but I think so. He was educated here. I believe he's a Harvard graduate, MIT. This man is a well-educated guy. He has held every imaginable position in serving the people of Israel, and he is a genuine war hero fighting for his country in 2 wars at least. And I showed this to you last week. You might want to go online, just look this up. There's several interesting things here, but here is a photograph of Barack Hussein Obama at age, I believe this is supposed to be at age 20, when he was allegedly going to school. And I say allegedly because nobody can prove anything about this guy. This president is the most secretive, non-transparent, the most hidden public servant I think that we've ever had, even more so than Hillary. I mean, Hillary and Billary, everybody knows everything about them, and it ain't good. This guy makes them pale by comparison as being a shrewd manipulator. And the only thing he has ever done before he was made president, when he was, what was it Rush has to say? He was, no, I can't, he was, anyway, he was made the president. The only thing he had ever done after college, supposedly taught at Chicago University for a while as a so-called, as an alleged professor of, constitutional professor, I think it was. But here he is, a photograph of him in his heyday, and this is probably at Occidental, I think is where he went. And he and a group of his friends, and even that is kind of shady and shadowy, they called themselves the Shroom Gang. And that was a takeoff from mushrooms, from dope and all that. And here's a photograph of the fearless leader in his straw gangster hat, blowing on a doobie, and eyes all squinty, trying to look really cool. And next to him is another 20-year-old. Now, you're not going to be able to see the picture really clearly from here. From where you are, you may not be able to make out the fact that that is Benjamin Netanyahu, where I'm pointing here, also at age 20, and he is in his paratrooper togs. And I believe this was just before, it may have been the raid on Entebbe where his brother was killed. Jonathan Netanyahu was killed there, the only casualty in the, if you haven't seen the movie Raid on Entebbe, watch the movie. It's a very interesting movie, an interesting history, a piece of history in Israel's history. But here you have fearless leader smoking a doobie, and the guy who he hates, who is truly a statesman and a leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, the third time re-elected Prime Minister of Israel. There's another picture that was on the internet some time ago. It's probably still available someplace, and it shows the Shroom Gang leader, the gangster there, the wannabe gangster, and it juxtaposes a picture on the other side like this one. This one's of Netanyahu. The other one shows George W. Bush at the same age, 20 or 21, and he's in his flight toggles with his helmet, ascending the ladder to get into his jet. He was, not only did he graduate both Yale and Harvard, has 2 master's degrees, I believe, one in economics, but he was also a fighter pilot, and I think he flew the 104, which is a very difficult jet to fly. And yet the press, who loved this bum and hated Bush, and Bush was not my favorite cowboy. He is one of the better presidents we've had overall, but he's not, he's not a Ronald Reagan. But that said, he's a decent human being. I can't say that for this bum. But it shows here again, the contrast between the Marxist Muslim in charge of this nation, and in this case Netanyahu, the other one with George W. Bush, the guy who the press loved to flog for 8 years, who this guy couldn't carry his dirty socks to the men's room. Well, anyway, so that's that. So we've got, part of why I shared that with you is because if you've been following this at all, you will see where Obama and his, and his Obamunists, his minions, literally used our tax dollars. Now, this is still to be proved. It's alleged, but based on their history, I believe every word of it. Used our tax dollars to fund a campaign in Israel to defeat Netanyahu. Well, why is that? Why is our alleged president and his Obamunist cadre going to Israel, a sovereign nation who is supposed to be our best friend in that area, the only friend we really have, and trying to undermine their government, starting with the prime minister? Well, it's because, among other reasons, is because the bum in charge fears Netanyahu and his statesmanship. The bum in charge, and there is no doubt in my military mind, the man is a Muslim, and he is doing everything he can to help the Muslims to achieve their caliphate, their world caliphate. Iran right now is the big dog in the room, and this bum and his underlings, Brother Kerry, also, well, I won't go into the other names he has, but Kerry is over there doing his best to undermine our allies in the region and sell us out. So it appears, and this is just my opinion, doesn't even mean there's any fact to it. You can draw your own conclusions. Read the Idaho State Journal. You won't find much there, but go online, go to the Wall Street Journal, go to Independent Business Daily, IBD, go to the Washington Post if you want to, and read what's going on. Netanyahu has had the courage to stand up against the Obamianists. Now, whether you like him or not, and it's obvious I detest this man, it doesn't change the fact that he is one of the most powerful men on the face of this earth. He wields a big stick, and he can hurt and has hurt a lot of people and a lot of nations. And he wants to make this deal with Iran. He wants to sell out the world. And I don't know if it's because he's a Muslim and he's willing to be martyred with a mushroom cloud over Pocatello. I don't know. It makes no sense to anybody in the world, and anybody. That not being said, and that notwithstanding, though, Obama's biggest foil, who's causing the biggest problem for him, is, of course, Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the prime minister of a nation of about 7 to 10 million people, a nation geographically about the size of New Jersey, a nation that, by contrast with the rest of the Middle East, shines like a 100-watt bulb in a box of 10 watts. I mean, the rest of Islam, and that's all that Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Iran, that all that is Islam. That's all it is. They are murdering the Christians at such an alarming rate that if they are allowed to, if this guy rules for more than the next 2 years, there may be no Christians left in the Middle East, where Christianity was born. And the Islamicists and Muslims, and make no mistake, every one of these horrible acts of terror you read about, whether it's against another Muslim or it's against the Jews or against the Christians, it is Muslims who is doing this. The name eludes me for the moment, the guy that writes in the ISJ that I told you a couple of weeks ago I couldn't believe I was agreeing with him, as he has said, those beheadings and those murders and all that are not being done by the local UUs. In fact, while the beheadings are going on, the UUs are busy talking about the LGBT community because that's their real interest. But that being said, every one of these horrible. Did you see there was a crawler on Fox News tonight showing the United Nations, not exactly a bastion of truth. The United Nations has said that Boko Haram, those monsters in Africa, have murdered at least 10,000 people last year, and most of those are Christians. Boko Haram, of course, has just recently gone online as being in support of ISIS. And remember, even though the Obamianists don't want to speak that word, Islam, because it might bring bad juju to the Muslims, the fact is that whether you call it ISIL, the Islamic State in the Levant, or if you want to call it ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, it is still Islam. So that being said, now, we just had in the last few days, last week I think it was, Jews celebrated Purim. And I want to share a little article with you about Purim, and then I want to kind of tease you with an idea. It's not too long, so bear with me. Now, my wife and I are supporters of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We make a regular monthly donation to them. It's not big. It's consistent, something that they can figure it into their budget. But we feel very strongly about the return of Jews to the homeland, about the safety of Jews from their neighbors who want to destroy them. I mean, Iran has made no bones about it. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Now think about what that means. That would be like somebody wanting, Washington, D.C. wanting to wipe Idaho off the face of the earth. It's just mind-boggling to think that anybody thinks in those terms. But Iran, which was once known as Persia when it was a great nation, wants to wipe Israel off the face of the map. All right, so a week or so ago, Jews around the world celebrated Purim. And Purim it's simple, but it's a very important holiday observance in the Jewish community. And let me just share something with you. Now, this is out of a magazine that I receive. I think it's quarterly. It comes from this is the spring volume from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. It's called The Journey magazine. building bridges between Christians and Jews. And Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein is the fellow who has, you see him on television periodically in these ads on television, pleading for help, basically, for the Jewish people who are needing to leave Russia now, and all of those areas of the world where the Jews are under tremendous pressure. The recent events in Paris, making it very obvious that in Europe, Jews are in great jeopardy. In fact, the only people in the world that are more persecuted now than the Jews, and the Jews have been the kicking boy, if you will, for the world for thousands of years. And yet now, irony of ironies, it is the Christians who are under more threat than even the Jews. That's saying a lot, because the Jews have endured for, 3,000 years and 2,000 years of everything they've gone through. Anyway, let me get back. So this celebrating God's deliverance, how the Jewish holiday of Purim points to God's past work and our current response. And this is a reading from Esther. And who knows that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Now you may know the story of Esther. This is from Esther 4:14. Esther is in the Old Testament. And he writes here, earlier this month, Jews celebrated Purim, perhaps the most festive holiday on the Jewish calendar. Though the story at the heart of the Jewish holiday of Purim dates back nearly 2,400 years, the themes are still amazingly relevant for the Jewish people and the nation today. Purim recalls the deliverance of the Jewish people from their enemies nearly 2,400 years ago. Excuse me, please. We have no way to cut to a commercial for me to do that, so bear with me. The Purim story found in the biblical book of Esther is one of the most memorable in the entire Bible, one that is read aloud in the synagogue during Purim services. The king of Persia, now known as Iran, chose a beautiful young woman named Esther to be his queen, unaware that she was Jewish. Esther heard from Mordecai, her uncle, that the king had entrusted the fate of Persian Jews to Haman, the king's top advisor. Haman hated the Jews and issued an order to kill them all, not unlike the madmen in Iran. When Mordecai found out about Haman's intentions, he persuaded Esther to speak to the king on behalf of the Jewish people. This was a dangerous thing for her to do, because anyone who came into the king's presence without being summoned could be put to death. Esther fasted for 3 days to prepare herself before meeting the king. Thankfully, he welcomed her, and she told him of Haman's plot against her people and begged for their salvation. Because of her bravery and her faith that God put her in that place for such a time as this, quote, of Esther 4:14, the Jewish people were saved, and Haman was hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Now, you can use an analogy here, and in this case, you might say, and I mean, you have to work this loosely. Netanyahu may be the modern day Esther, so to speak. I realize different gender and all that, although with the gender bending today, what difference does it make, I guess? But you may say that Netanyahu is the Esther pleading to the king for the people, and Obama is Haman, who has just been hanged, figuratively speaking, because Obama is working hand in glove with Muslims to destroy Israel. I know, it's a loose allegory or loose analogy, bear with me. All right, so today Jews focus on this dramatic time in their history by reading aloud the Megillah, a scroll containing the book of Esther, twice, once on Purim Eve and again on Purim Day. During this reading at the synagogue, Jews boo, hiss, stomp their feet, and rattle groggers, or noisemakers, whenever Haman's name is mentioned as a way to blot out his name. So anytime you hear the name Obama, rattle your grogger. The 9th chapter of Esther establishes the celebration of Purim and spells out the main mitzvot, or religious duties specific to this holiday. The first being the public reading of the book of Esther. The next mitzvah, the singular form of mitzvot, is festivity and rejoicing. The third mitzvah is sending food to friends. The final mitzvah of Purim is giving gifts to the poor. Many Jews also observe a fast prior to Purim, commemorating Esther's 3 days of fasting in preparation for meeting with the king. Called the fast of Esther, it is usually observed the day before Purim. Unlike some other Jewish fasts, it is not a time of sadness, but rather of elevation and inspiration. Still, though it is a festive holiday, it is a holiday with a serious message. Even if Esther's story is familiar to you, I urge you to reread it today and reflect upon it. Esther's bravery and obedience to God, her willingness to put her own life on the line to save her people, not unlike what Netanyahu has done by speaking before the combined houses of the Congress and by angering his lordship, the Obamanist. Her willingness teaches us a valuable lesson about self-sacrifice and purpose that is as true and meaningful today as it was thousands of years ago. Haman, too, is more than just a historical figure. He is alive today as he was in biblical times. We recognize Haman in the evil actions of ISIS terrorists who are cutting a wide swath of destruction across the Middle East. We feel his presence when we read in the news of terrorists who perpetrate murderous attacks on Jews and Jewish institutions around the world. We hear him in the hateful words of Muslim clerics who preach the Jews are the descendants of apes and pigs and deny the ancient Jewish connections to the land of Israel. On this holiday, Jews fulfill the biblical command to celebrate, quote, the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into a day of celebration. And that's Esther 9:22. The book of Esther also commands that this day should be observed in every generation. These days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. That's Esther 9:28. One of the messages of Purim, a message that applies to Jews and Christians alike, is that in a world with no shortage of Hamans, we need more Esthers committed to standing humbly before God and seeking to defend his people in the face of all difficulties. I thank you, my friend, for being one of those Esthers through your support of the fellowship's life-giving work. Now, that is, I guess, allegorically, if I'm using the word correctly, that certainly kind of points to what we have just seen, this epic struggle. And you can say this is between good and evil, if you will, between what Netanyahu has been doing since he was a boy, since he was a young man, 20 years old, 18 years old, serving his country on the front lines. And if you go on to YouTube, there's an interesting series of photographs that somebody got some pictures. They show one of them is he's number 2 in the stick, making an entry into a defended position, presumably, by Muslims. And he was wounded twice, I think it was, 3 times in the service of his nation. As I said, he's held just about every office he can hold in Israel in service to his people. And now he's just been reelected. And one of the wonderful things about this, as far as a thumb in the eye to the Obaminists, is this is his, his third time at bat, Netanyahu's third time at bat. And the margin of victory this time was even stronger than last time, even in spite of Obama's henchmen being over there trying to undermine the elections using our tax dollars. Even though it's been funneled through these organizations and it's supposedly not our tax dollars, nonetheless, it's being investigated as that. So today, figuratively speaking, is a Purim, in that good has overcome evil. Now, lest you think that I'm unpatriotic and I don't love my nation, forget about it. I've served my nation in 5 different uniforms. I've taken the oath to the Constitution more times than I can remember. I believe in our country. I believe in what America is about. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in our Judeo-Christian values and our roots. I believe that this is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, in spite of people like Obama and the Obaminists, in spite of the Clinton gang and others like them, Dick Durbin from Illinois, and there's so many that you could point to, those bums from California. In spite of those people and all the evil that they have contrived, I believe in this nation, and I know you do too. And so when I share things like this with you, and I do get a small amount of pleasure when I can see that, yeah, the guy in the white hat won this one, the good guy, that won this one. Anyway, so now it'll be very interesting to see what happens, because Israel cannot allow Iran to finish their business. And Obama is doing everything he can to interfere with the business of Israel. But sooner or later, Israel will have to act. And when they do, I have no doubt it will be decisively. We may have a new president by then. God help us if we have this guy in place. The future holds some very interesting things for us. Now, before we get to, let's see, I have a couple of film clips I'd like to show you tonight that kind of go to what we're talking about. And this first thing really goes to the heart of the matter, and it has to do with what it says, the truth about the balance of power in the Middle East. Now, you would think that Israel, the size of New Jersey, is the big guy, the bad guy, but they're surrounded by nations. These nations are huge, and they're the little guy. But okay, so Josh, are we ready on number 4? Here's about the balance of power and why it's so important for Netanyahu to lead Israel.
The recent war in Gaza was portrayed in the media as a conflict between the big, mighty Israel and the small, weak Palestinians. But is this the full picture? Or were the rocket attacks coming from Gaza just the tip of a much larger iceberg Israel is facing? Let's learn the truth about the balance of power in the Middle East. So, is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict an isolated struggle of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza for independence? It's a far bigger conflict than that. The Palestinian armed struggle must be seen in context as a broader Middle Eastern effort to destroy Israel. Here is a quick historical reminder. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, which is run by Mahmoud Abbas and officially represents the Palestinians, was established in 1964 by the Arab League. This was back in the days when Gaza and the West Bank were occupied by Egypt and Jordan. The PLO was not established to fight Jordan or Egypt's occupation, but rather, just as its charter stated, to annihilate the Jewish people living in Tel Aviv and Haifa and take over all of Israel. Also, Hamas, which controls Gaza, must be seen in context. This organization, which was formed in 1987, is only a local branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical, transnational and anti-Semitic organization operating in 70 countries. One cannot ignore the fact that 3 times over the last 70 years, Arab armies united in an attempt to destroy Israel. And let's not forget, Qatar, Iran, Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries still actively support terror against Israel and call for its destruction. Now, is it only a coincidence that the Arab translation of Hitler's Mein Kampf or the notoriously anti-Semitic Protocols of the Elders of Zion have become bestsellers in Muslim and Arab countries? Bestsellers! So, in reality, the Palestinian campaign against Israel cannot be separated from the larger hostile Muslim environment which promotes Israel's destruction. This environment is 650 times larger than Israel in size, 50 times larger in population, politically much more powerful since the 22 Arab countries and 57 Muslim countries operate as a united bloc against Israel in diplomatic forums. And militarily, they far outnumber Israel in armed personnel, tanks and aircraft. In addition to regular armies, Israel is dealing with Muslim terror. Hezbollah in the north is threatening Israel with an arsenal of 100,000 rockets, far more than most governments have in the world. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are on Israel's borders in the Golan and Sinai. Hamas in Judea, Samaria and Gaza. Not your most friendly neighbors. This is a map of missiles which are aimed at Israel as we speak, some of which carry chemical and biological warheads. And Iran is working on a nuclear bomb which could reach Israel in minutes. And economically, Arab League states produce over 30 million barrels of crude oil per day. That's about $1,000 billion worth of oil per year. More than 5,000 times the amount of oil Israel produces. Conclusion. Just as the Arab League established the PLO to fight Israel in 1964, the network of ties and alliances in the Arab world today still remains an active and powerful force in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the same goes for the war and ongoing conflict in Gaza. Hamas, which vows for Israel's destruction, is backed by the Muslim Brotherhood, receives weapons and training from Iran, and money from Qatar, which, by the way, makes Hamas the second richest terror organization in the world after ISIS. The fact is that Israel is a small country fighting for its survival in a large and hostile Middle East. So, is this why you should support Israel? No. Israel should not be supported because it is the underdog, rather because despite the tremendous threat and challenges it faces, Israel bravely continues promoting freedom, human rights and democracy, which no other country in the region comes even close to. Now, Doesn't that put things into perspective?
That's interesting. If you think in light of today, I was listening to the news as I was driving in tonight. The Obamianists were working hand in glove with the opposition in Israel, trying to defeat Likud, or Likud, however you say it, the party to which Netanyahu is the candidate, by busing in Arab Israelis. Arab Israelis were being bussed by people being paid by our government, as well as those who are against Netanyahu, to vote against Netanyahu. The pressures are enormous on Netanyahu and the state of Israel in general. And yet, Netanyahu has had the courage to stand and deliver, if you will. It is an astonishing contrast between a true statesman and a leader and a warrior of his nation and this bum that smoked dope in Occidental and wherever else he was. All right, now there's an added dimension to this, and this is important to understand this. I know you've heard this before, but perhaps not in this context. And it kind of goes to the issue of why we have the problems we have, other than the fact that the Muslims hate everybody. They hate the Jews, whom they say are descended from apes and pigs. What kind of thinking is that? And this is what they're taught. They hate the Christians because we are, because we're Christians, and they talk out of both sides of their face. You know, they say that they respect the people of the book. That's what we Christians are called. Yeah, they respect them until they can lop off our heads. But anyway, so there's another dimension, or there's added information here as to why we have the problems we have in the Middle East. Josh, how about number 5? Are we good to go there? Okay, please watch this.
When I did my graduate studies at the Middle East Institute at Columbia University's School of International Affairs, I took many courses on the question of the Middle East conflict. Semester after semester, we studied the Middle East conflict as if it was the most complex conflict in the world, when in fact, it is probably the easiest conflict in the world to explain. It may be the hardest to solve, but it is the easiest to explain. In a nutshell, it's this. One side wants the other side dead. Israel wants to exist as a Jewish state and to live in peace. Israel also recognizes the right of Palestinians to have their own state and to live in peace. The problem, however, is that most Palestinians and many other Muslims and Arabs do not recognize the right of the Jewish state of Israel to exist. This has been true since 1947, when the United Nations voted to divide the land called Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews accepted the United Nations partition, but no Arab or any other Muslim country accepted it. When British rule ended on May 15, 1948, the armies of all the neighboring Arab states, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Transjordan, and Egypt, attacked the one-day-old state of Israel in order to destroy it. But to the world's surprise, the little Jewish state survived. Then it happened again. In 1967, the dictator of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, announced his plan, in his words, to destroy Israel. He placed Egyptian troops on Israel's border, and armies of surrounding Arab countries were also mobilized to attack. However, Israel preemptively attacked Egypt and Syria. Israel did not attack Jordan and begged Jordan's king not to join the war. But he did. And only because of that did Israel take control of Jordanian land, specifically the West Bank of the Jordan River. Shortly after the war, the Arab states went to Khartoum, Sudan, and announced their famous 3 no's. No recognition, no peace, and no negotiations. What was Israel supposed to do? Well, one thing Israel did a little more than a decade later in 1978 was to give the entire Sinai Peninsula, an area of land bigger than Israel itself and with oil, back to Egypt, because Egypt, under new leadership, signed a peace agreement with Israel. So Israel gave land for the promise of peace with Egypt, and it has always been willing to do the same thing with the Palestinians. All the Palestinians have ever had to do is recognize Israel as a Jewish state and promise to live in peace with it. But when Israel has proposed trading land for peace, as it did in 2000, when it agreed to give the Palestinians a sovereign state in more than 95% of the West Bank and all of Gaza, the Palestinian leadership rejected the offer and instead responded by sending waves of suicide terrorists into Israel. Meanwhile, Palestinian radio, television, and school curricula remain filled with glorification of terrorists, demonization of Jews, and the daily repeated message that Israel should cease to exist. So it's not hard to explain the Middle East dispute. One side wants the other dead. The motto of Hamas, the Palestinian rulers of Gaza, is, "We love death as much as the Jews love life." There are 22 Arab states in the world, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. There is one Jewish state in the world, and it is about the size of New Jersey. In fact, tiny El Salvador is larger than Israel. Finally, think about these two questions. If tomorrow Israel laid down its arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? And if the Arab countries around Israel laid down their arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? In the first case, there would be an immediate destruction of the state of Israel and mass murder of its Jewish population. In the second case, there would be peace the next day. As I said at the outset, it is a simple problem to describe. One side wants the other dead. And if it didn't, there would be peace. Please remember this. There has never been a state in the geographic area known as Palestine that was not Jewish. Israel is the third Jewish state to exist in that area. There was never an Arab state, never a Palestinian state, never a Muslim or any other state. That's the issue. Why can't the one Jewish state the size of El Salvador be allowed to exist? That is the Middle East problem. I'm Dennis Prager.
And we have our own problems right here locally, and I shared some of this with you about a month or so ago. I asked a rhetorical question about why we have 2,000 Muslims living in the city of Pocatello. Most of those are college students. There are very few Arabs or Muslims that are actually living as residents, permanent residents in Pocatello. There are a couple high-profile doctors who live here, but there are very few that actually are permanent residents here. And I asked the rhetorical question, why are these Muslims, and they're, if not all Muslims, mostly Muslims, why are they coming to little tiny Pocatello, and why are there 2,000 of them here, and why is our university actively recruiting them? And I also posed the rhetorical perspective, if you will, that within that 2,000, you can bet there's a contingent of ISIS or some other nut job group that is Islamic by nature and Muslim by faith or whatever. And we are very, very ripe here in Pocatello. We would be hard-pressed to defend this community against even a small contingent of these guys if they decided to go rogue and inflict themselves upon us. Now, case in point, minor case, but it's worth talking about. First of all, does this, having this 2,000 Muslims here in town, does this really contribute to diversity? I don't think so. How can we say that this builds the community? You really can't. These are people who come from a different mindset, a different part of the world, who many of these young people up at the university are extraordinarily arrogant because that's the way they've been raised. We are like the Jews. In their mind, we're descended of apes and pigs, and we are to be disrespected if they have the opportunity. Case in point, this young fellow right here. This picture was on the front of the Idaho State Journal, and quite honestly, I was astonished the ISJ had the guts to put this guy's face out there and make a public spectacle of him. Who is he? Well, this is the guy, says this was in yesterday's Idaho State Journal. 3 additional charges of battery were filed against Sultan Samir Bamoelian, the man already charged with multiple counts of trespassing, battery, and assault following a string of incidents at Idaho State University dormitories beginning February 23rd. Bamoelian, 25, has been charged with inappropriately touching 4 more people. He was arraigned Monday, and detention officers reported that Bamoelian was being transported to the State Hospital South in Blackfoot. A student at ISU, Bamoelian is from Saudi Arabia, and he has now been banned from all ISU properties. My next question would be, why hasn't he been deported? So much for that. Last Wednesday, Bamoelian was arrested and charged with second-degree stalking and trespass after he was discovered inside a room at Turner House. Just an hour before his arrest, Bamoelian was located in Nichols Hall, and was warned that if he came back, he would be arrested. Pocatello Police Lieutenant Ian Nelson said that after being released from jail Friday, Bamoelian visited the police department and wanted to talk to an officer. While at the building, he allegedly entered a restroom and inappropriately touched a female worker. Bamoelian then allegedly went to the Rendezvous Center on the ISU campus, where he entered their dorm rooms and touched 3 other students, 2 males and a female. He was arrested and charged with trespass following the incidents at the Rendezvous Center. In February, Bamoelian was charged with unlawful entry and battery after a woman living in Turner House reported that she awoke to find the suspect in her dorm room with his pants down, and he was allegedly touching her. He was charged with unlawful entry and battery following the incident. Bamoelian pleaded not guilty to both those charges last week. A $1,000 bond was set for the battery charge, and Bamoelian was released on his own recognizance for the unlawful entry. ISU spokesman Adrian King said a no-contact order was issued in connection to the February 23rd incident, and Bamoelian, who lives off campus, was banned from all residential halls at that time. King said Saturday that Bamoelian has now been banned from all university properties. ISU will conduct an investigation into the recent incidents involving Bamoelian before taking action, King said. Disciplinary action could result in suspension or expulsion from the university. And my question again is, why is he even in this country? Of course, he gets his day in court. Even though he's not an American, he'll get the same privilege as any American to be heard in court. But I wonder if he'll be deported. Somehow, I don't think this administration would have that guts. But it goes back to a question I asked rhetorically several weeks ago, but that is, what do we know about these 2,000 students coming to this country? We know that most of them are funded by Saudi Arabia. We know that Saudi Arabia is the progenitor, the very genesis of what is today ISIS, starting back when they, before the Muslim Brotherhood, the name eludes me for the moment, but they are the ones who started the aggressive resurgence of fundamental Islam, and that is off with their heads, that kind of stuff. All right. Now, I've had it reported to me several times by a number of people, and I understand there are a number of people who would like to make reports but are actually afraid to do so. About one incident that comes to mind was a woman I know who was walking on the sidewalk on campus, and three Arab students, they could be Muslim, they could not be, 3 Arab students who were approaching her, and they refused to yield for the woman on the sidewalk. She had to step into the gutter so that these lions of Saudi Arabia could have their way on the sidewalk. There have been several incidents of young women being disrespected, and I'll use that word in a very loose frame, by presumably Arab students at the university and elsewhere. 2 young women I know, one of whom is a student there, was literally, I guess you would say she was followed by 4 young Arab-looking men, probably Muslims. And you can call this profiling if you want. I call it common sense. You know, if a person looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, and all that. And I have told her, as I tell you, my audience, be sure you tell, especially your women children, your daughters, your grandchildren, keep the car doors locked. Don't walk anywhere by yourself on the campus, because you have 2,000 suspects. And I know that's a loose statement, but that's the way I see it. Follow up on that. This is in today's ISJ. And again, I'm surprised that they had the courage to do this. The ISJ is not noted for having courage in the social structure unless they can beat up on somebody that disagrees with the mantra of the left. Man accused of aggravated battery. This is in today's paper, a little piece on this, page 2. Pocatello police arrested a 23-year-old man for aggravated battery on Tuesday. Police say they arrested Muhammad Khalil, who resides in Pocatello. on 2 counts of aggravated battery following a disturbance on the 100 block of Stanford. Khalil allegedly used brass knuckles to injure 2 people, police said. Additional details weren't available Tuesday. So why does our university actively recruit this potential danger to our nation? All right. Now, we don't have much time, but I wanted to share a couple of things with you. It occurred to me today, you know, we're always hearing about Islam being the religion of peace and all that. Here's a couple of points of contrast I'd like to share with you. This is out of Matthew in the Gospel. This is out of Matthew 18 and 19. And Jesus came up and spoke to them, the disciples, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So Jesus told his disciples, go out and basically teach and proselytize. What does Islam say? Or what does the prophet, as he's called, Muhammad, say? Go out and bring Islam to the people, and if they reject it, kill them. It's paraphrasing, but that's quite a contrast. Let's see. Surah 9, verse 73. O Prophet Muhammad, strike hard against the disbelievers and the hypocrites and be harsh against them. Their abode is hell, and worse indeed is their destination. Surah 9, 123. O you who believe, fight those of the disbelievers who are close to you, and let them find harshness in you. And know that Allah is with you, with those who are al-mutakun, the pious. All right. Matthew 10. Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out impure spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts. No bag for the journey, or extra shirt or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worth his keep. Whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the house, give it your greeting. If the home is deserting, let your peace rest on it. Excuse me. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Truly, I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah at the day of judgment than for that town. And what does Islam preach? Rape, pillage, burn, steal, take everything you want, sell everybody into slavery, and kill the man. God bless you. Be sure and watch Aaron Hayes Sunday at 5 p.m. on Channel 64. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Good night.